Friends, family and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Delboy blog, and as always we're going to date stamp this. It's year 4 blog 23, or in legacy numbers blog number 179, and it's dated 27th of July 2025. Yes, and we'll be in August by the end of the week, and that's going to help a little bit. You know, just from a money point of view. But I've mentioned it many times before. All through my life, I've calculated my life via month ends, always because of money. And I must have calculated years of my life away, just going, oh, when's the end of the month? When's the end of the month? And I'm sure that's a familiar thing that's happened to us all. And, you know, I don't think that'll ever change, you know, even when I retire. I'll be going by check, I'm sure of it. Just the way that life is. And it's probably why sometimes I'm a little bit jealous of people that have got family and friends, because with a family that live in the same house, you've got always a way to vent or chat your problems away, and they can do the same to you. When you've got children, your worries are always based on them. You know, I don't have those things. It's hard to vent. I talk to the camera. This is why I find my blog quite good, and my blog is a diary, which I've mentioned many times before. I hope people never take offence by anything that I say, because it's a diary. And like with any diary, they capture the moment. They don't really capture a week, which is why my blog sometimes is so jam-packed, because I don't do it on a Monday and a Tuesday and a Wednesday and a Thursday and a Friday. Don't do it like a diary. It's all amalgamated into one. So sometimes what I was thinking on a Monday doesn't correspond to how I am on a Saturday. Emotions are emotions. They are of the moment. So you have to sort of like understand that sometimes when something is said in the heat of the moment, it can be quite difficult, because if you don't get it out your system, it can turn to resentment. When it turns to resentment, it's a totally different thing. And that's something that you definitely don't want. But I'm digressing a little bit here. It's a muggy day today, overcast. I've managed to do some gardening during odd periods, but it's been very difficult because my mother is taking a water tablet, which is causing us a little bit of distress in regards to toiletry habits, which I don't really want to talk about too much. But there was one time this week, my sister goes at 2:30 and I have to look after my mum totally until she turns up at 9 o'clock. And no word of a lie, but she went every hour. And that to me means I got very little done. But there were some positives this week. I managed to get some YouTube videos out. Something that I said I was going to do last Sunday. And when I said I'm going to do something and I actually get something done, it makes me feel so much better. They are something called Delboy Shorts. And I'll talk a little bit about them later on. But for now, we'll talk about the news, and I've got to read my chicken scratch. I had to do it very quickly today because buses don't operate the same on a Sunday as they do during the week. So my sister gets here later, which means I have to do everything later, and therefore my blog starts later. So, you know, I've had to write down things very, very quickly when it comes to the news. And here we go. So we have the war, as we always do, and it says here, Russia and Ukraine discussed peace talks on Wednesday, with more prisoner of war swaps agreed, but still they are far away from any sign of a ceasefire. The meeting lasted only 40 minutes, which is the shortest talks yet. There was a lot of other news, but it was all sort of like similar. Trump and his 55-day wait, Putin and his constant barrages, and the ceasefire still being a problem, even though Ukraine have stated we need this just so that we can pick up our dead, and we need this so that we can arrange the prisoner of war swaps. But it seems very much like nobody was really listening. So it's distressing, and to be quite honest, all I want is the war to end. So the news was sort of similar, so I decided that the peace talks that happened on Wednesday was the biggest news story, because the rest was exactly as I said last week and the week before and the week before. A little bit similar with the UK news. It's been filled with mostly sporting events and so forth. So the first story was the Lionesses. That's the women's football team. They're in the Euros at the moment. They beat Italy on Tuesday, with the final now set for tonight. I think it's at 5 o'clock, to be quite honest, between England and Spain. This is quite a big event for England. We've never won a big Euro or World Cup event where we've won it twice. This is our chance to get a second hand on that cup. Just getting to the final is brilliant, don't get me wrong. It's been entertaining in parts. I've watched bits of it where I can. My mother's always liked to watch it, along with the darts. She's been watching the darts this week. There was a semi-final last night that was very entertaining. And, you know, all I can do is wish our England ladies good fortune for later on. We've also got the Formula One. So it's quite a busy time for sport. Like I said, we've just had Wimbledon and all sorts of stuff. You know, there's golf tournaments going on. The cricket's just started with their... they go past their one-day internationals to the proper tournaments of days. I think it's against the West Indies. I'm not sure. It's the first one, I think. And of course, after that, there'll be the Ashes for the cricket. So, yeah. The next piece of news was that protests have increased at asylum hotels across Bournemouth, Norwich and Portsmouth. Yeah, this is all to do with where we store asylum seekers in the country. A lot of people just don't want this. It's all about immigration. It's all about taking control a little bit. Who controls our waters? Why are we spending our money on keeping them? There should be something that prevents them from coming over here. They do tend to start from France. We do believe that France should be doing more. All sorts of that comes into it. But this was just a news article on the protests in regards to holding people in these asylum hotels. And the last bit of story was one from a bit in the past, really. It's to do with Greg Wallace, who's a presenter, really. He was a presenter on MasterChef. And he was under scrutiny because he's been accused by contestants and other stars of some sexual predatory sort of characteristics. So it read here, Greg Wallace still protests his innocence after the BBC have formally given news on how they're going to handle MasterChef at Christmas. I think a few of the accusations were quashed. I think there were over 80, 40 still upheld. That's a big figure, which how you can protest all of that, I don't know. But that's the news on that. But to be quite honest, the distressing news this week is my childhood gets ever smaller, with the death of two big stars that were pretty prominent through my life, and that's Ozzy Osbourne and Hulk Hogan, for two totally different reasons, really. Ozzy Osbourne, although in a band for a genre that I'm not that up on, which is metal, I recognise the strength of the character. And Ozzy Osbourne's been on telly and documentaries, and I've known about him because of his wife and the kiddies, his TV show, and of course the thing that makes him what it is, which is his music. There are certain tracks that I instantly recognise without knowing very little about metal music. And he's done collaborations, I mean, he has crossed over with Elton John. He did a track on one of his last albums, I Did It All For You, which I thought was a very deep song in regards to what a star does for his fans. Basically the song is I Did It All For You. Everything that happened, all because I love you guys and girls as fans, and my life has been in a window because of it. And it was a lovely song. Elton John played piano on it and sang one verse, I think, and one of the choruses. They were friends. He was one of the first people that came out, said he was thinking about the family at the time and how he missed Ozzy's jokes. Because from what I've heard, he was a bit of a joker. And that came across actually in his TV show. He died at 76. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's just before the 2020s, so about 2019-18, I believe. Some people will say took it all on himself because of the drinks and the drugs. Yeah, you can put down anything like that, but you don't know the pressures of these stars. It's free flowing. It was around very early stages of the 70s. I mean, we know now, don't we, what the effects are of on our bodies for certain things that we always thought wasn't that strong, and we find out later on you were killing yourself with it. So I look at it as just a loss, and a big one at that. And that was Tuesday. A couple of days later, and I'm reading the news about Ozzy and all of the people that were giving such fantastic memories of what he meant to them. And Hulk Hogan was announced dead at the age of 71. Now, you could say this is a lesser thing, Hulk Hogan being a American star wrestling, but he did creep into films, and the wrestling did creep in over here. There aren't many people even that don't watch wrestling that don't know what a WWF star is, or what a Royal Rumble is. And I always thought of him as being quite oldish on the side of wrestling when he was the big star that he was. And I remember watching recaps of the very first Rumbles against Andre the Giant. And I really started watching American wrestling when The Undertaker was around, so Rowdy Roddy Piper and that were well-established characters, probably on their way out. And when characters like The Rock and so forth came in, I started to drift away again. They were always there because of the games as well. Arcade games had wrestling games, computers had wrestling games, consoles had wrestling games, and they were fun to play, you know. So it sort of like crept into your consciousness, even though it was a sport that you really, I always thought of it as secondary to boxing. Boxing was always around for me. And wrestling to me was that fun thing that happened on a Saturday on World of Sport, with Dickie Davis on a Saturday afternoon with characters like Giant Haystacks, you know, and Big Daddy and Pat Roach being a wrestler, and grannies and little kiddies spurring them on, and very much always looking like a pantomime, which is where all the fakery came from. It's why I was so glad that there was a film called The Wrestler out, which I really, really liked. I'd love a 4K of that, by the way. And it, you know, it just showed a character that pretty much is on the out, that is surviving only by little exhibition matches, the pain they have to go to because of aching joints and arthritis and all of these steroids that they were taking to keep that pain away. And yeah, so Hulk Hogan, another big death. I think it was a cardiac arrest, 71 years old. And I saw him literally on television on the Wednesday on a rewatch of Rocky 3 on ITV2. So you can see it was like, oh my God, I only just watched you as Thunderlips, I think his name was, in Rocky 3. It's just distressing. It just shrinks my life all the time. And I usually now talk a little bit about my week, and I'm starting to feel a bit distressed talking about my week a little bit, but I must fight through that. This is a diary. This is my time for me to vent and all of that sort of stuff. But you get news, and sometimes it's so distressing that it just encapsulates the whole of the week. So I don't have anything really written down for Monday, Tuesday, because I'd forgotten it all based on a doctor's call that I had on Wednesday. And on that Wednesday, the doctors from the have evaluated the 2 memory visit trips to my mum, the blood tests they've taken away, the evaluation of how we're looking after my mum, all of that sort of stuff. And they've come away saying that she's got vascular dementia, which is probably one of the most common, but probably the most deadly of the dementias, because it's vascular. It's the beginning part indicates sort of the things that you can expect to be a problem from now on. So we are talking about heart and lungs, 2 of the biggest things that you've got in your body. Any of those sort of things are attacked are basically going to end her life earlier. Some of the side effects, I mean, my God, anaphylactic was one of the words that's used. If you've ever heard that word before, that's the heart. There were mentions of seizures, but when we had the CT scan, they mentioned that my mum had possibly stroke. And there's 2 different things there, you see: seizures, electrical problems to the brain, and strokes, lack of oxygen and blood to the brain, causing all sorts of problems. It is not a mighty leap between the 2. And, you know, we've only ever had the 1 CT scan. And, you know, it's it mentioned in there that there were pools of blood that were very dark, which indicated that at the time they didn't think that her collapse on the floor was what caused this, which was a stroke that happened on that day. She'd had this a while back, and that meant that she's probably had a couple of mini strokes. And when you look at that, you're constantly looking at your mother and thinking, are you having one now? Did you have any in the night? All of these sort of things, because every time I ask my mum memory things, she gets different things wrong. She couldn't remember my birthday this morning, my dad's birthday this morning, my sister's birthday this morning. She remembered her own. When my sister asked her the same questions, about 40 minutes later, she remembered them all. But then again, I gave her the answers. But she remembered from 40 minutes, which is great. But there were other times where she'd been to the toilet and 40 minutes later she wanted to go to the toilet again, and she couldn't remember how we handled it. She wanted to go to the toilet by herself, but yet I told her 40 minutes before, the first time that she wanted to go, that I'd bring the toilet to her. So you can imagine, short term is also a big issue. So getting that news of vascular dementia meant that I needed to tell my big manager and my people manager, because my task manager was not around. Now, my big manager was very sympathetic, and he said, look, yeah, right off today when it comes to work, don't worry about it. Your mum's the important thing. It must be pretty big in your life. Don't worry about it too much. And pretty much my people manager said the same sort of thing. But he did open up about my task manager. You'll remember I've been talking about my task manager the last couple of weeks, saying that, you know, I've been trying to get to know him, respect him, I like his enthusiasm and that. But apparently he did raise a question the day before he went on holiday, which was the Friday, not just gone, but the one before, where he'd questioned whether I was actually logging in and working early as I said I'm doing. Now, I've always said that because my mum's takes me away from work during the day, you know, to do certain things, I've been getting up in the morning, logging into my computer, and then basically going back and forth, doing work and getting things ready before my sister turns up at 8:30. Now, I start at sort of like 6 in the morning, because I have to unlock the door for my sister, give my mum some painkillers so that when we get her up at 8:30, those painkillers are in her system. But there's a big time between 6 and 9 o'clock where I could then sit at the computer and get some work done. And he's basically said he's wondering whether I actually do anything. And that's a slur on me, because I told him that I don't say that I sit down for an hour and do something. I sit down and I do as much as I can. It all depends on what's going on. And he said he understood my situation. But to actually then mention it to my people manager that he's questioning my work ethic hit me hard. It gave me a bad taste in my mouth for the whole of the week. I can't speak to him about it. He's not back till Monday. But I told my people manager I wanted him to do one thing. And I said, you raise a meeting on Monday, early, you have a word with him, and you quash it on the head, any talk in relation to my work ethic. And then I've taken this very bad, and that I was even thinking about going to my union about it, because nobody does that. The amount of work I did through COVID shows what my work ethic is. I've got a bad situation going on at home at the moment, and I work as hard as I possibly can, and I push myself every day, and I've got my own health issues after my heart attack, which are still prevalent today, including sleep deprivation, and that he should never, ever mention such things to other people, even if he's thinking about them. Because the other thing that happened on the Friday, no, it was the Thursday, sorry. We all had to go to a meeting, And the Ministry of Justice has asked us for 100 people out of the 1,000 that make up our digital team to opt out of working for the MOJ. In other words, leave on your own accord and we'll give you a compensation package. Because they've said with the budgetary requirements from the government this year, with everything that's going on in regards to bringing back equipment, it should be well known that cuts across the board are now coming, and we now have to look at employees, and it won't be too far along the line before we go to voluntary and then compulsory redundancies. Now, this isn't anything that's not already in the news. It's been in the news, so I'm not sprouting anything. But when somebody starts sprouting about work ethic, it's not very long before they start putting the pressure on to you. We've noticed this. We pay you this. We're asking you this to do this. Like, go part-time, go for the opt-out, go for voluntary redundancy, or even later on, compulsory. So, no, I'm not happy with this guy mentioning this, and I've told him in no uncertain terms and very sternly, he shut up about it. And I told him as well, it'll take a long time now for me to trust this guy. If he'd have kept it to himself, I wouldn't have known. He didn't. And that's the biggest mistake he's made as far as I'm concerned. So yeah. So you got a little bit about Wednesday, apart from my lovely evening with Ian Hill, the Ramblings, which I always have a great time with. We did our chat. There was people that turned up. There were obviously other chats going on, which diminished the numbers, and that's always a bit disappointing. But it is what it is. But it didn't alter our feelings of camaraderie, our feeling of fun. It doesn't stop us continuing. We've done 67 of these every Wednesday. It's sort of like a stay point now in the calendar. So we hope that continues, and we're thinking of expanding it into having a couple of people on, or should I say Ian is. And I'm agreeing, yeah, you need to keep it fresh, Ian. Maybe a guest coming on every now and again, having specific topics. All sorts of stuff is being talked about. And the only other thing that's happened really is on Thursday I was given, along with my other colleagues, a little task to do in regards to deleting duplicates in our database. I managed to get some training done, which I've been trying to do for weeks and weeks and weeks. I managed to get an hour and a half in, which is, you might seem to think, well, why is that news? Why are you mentioning that? When I had my heart attack, I've had trouble concentrating, and I've had trouble with, train of thought, and tiredness creeps in. So to manage to get an hour and a half in on a very complex program, where they're talking all sorts of new languages, new words for the button bar at the top and the side menu on the left. They're not called that. They're given specific manner names. It's almost like learning a new language sometimes with IT. And I got an hour and a half in. There are small quizzes at the end of each section, and I started off badly with 2 questions, and that meant I got 50% because I got 1 right, 1 wrong. Another one where there were 3 questions, and I got 2 right, 1 wrong. And the last section, which was more about how to use the program, and I got every 1 right. And that's because I use it every day. So you can imagine it was learning those new, what they want to call them, collars me, but the actual how you do it, because I do it every day, easier. And I got every single one right. So you can imagine, it fills you with a bit of confidence. Friday is always the busy day, isn't it? My mum's hair, getting the weekly shopping done, all of that sort of stuff. And then, of course, the handover at the end to show that Friday week is finished. And you get to Saturday. And Saturday was the nicest day of the week. My sister let me go to the pictures. She said, you know, you go off and you've had a bad week. I'll look after Mum. Go and have a couple of hours. And I went to see the Fantastic Four. And that's really nice of my sister. And, you know, it is what it is. It's a Marvel movie, so it made me happy to see that. It was funny because when I got back in the time that I had left, which wasn't a lot because I had blog prep, listening to so much crap in people's reviews, you wouldn't believe it, you know, that people brought up such stuff. It's a comic book, fantasy, right? Science doesn't come into it. All you need to know about is there's this one character, he's super brainy, right? If there is a section in the film where you know that that would be an impossibility in real life, there are no rules of physics in a comic book. You can explain it all away by just knowing this guy's a genius. He's obviously thought of it. You don't need to worry. So it takes it all away. Comic book writers that wrote these stories back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s weren't physicists, right? They didn't write big equations on boards and say, you know what? Yeah, that's possible. We'll write that in. You know, it doesn't work like that. There was one that really annoyed me, right? It shows an obvious, you don't know the backstory of these characters. Now, I will tell you this, Galactus, and this is not a spoiler, is a godlike being. He is a force of nature. He lives because the universe allows him to live under a caveat that he has to continue to eat live planets to live. He can't eat dead moons. So there has to be like a molten center to the planets. He's a huge guy. He's a cosmic guy, right? Now, somebody put and said, the FF, when they learn of Galactus, go to fly to his ship, and they conveniently allowed, the Galactus conveniently allowed the FF to park close to his ship and not do anything about it, right? That, to me, and this is the reviewers, was a ridiculous thing. You'd have blown that ship to Kingdom Come as soon as it got within 2 billion miles of something of this ship. Now, from a very early start in this comic book, Galactus, he's so powerful that the FF's, or the Fantastic Four ship, would have been considered to you and I to be a fly. Am I bothered that a fly is approaching me or floating around me or anything else? The FF are nothing. They're powerless. He can blow them up with a click of his fingers, he's thinking. So why is he bothered? That's why that's there. And if a reviewer then looks at it and goes, that's an impossibility because it then have been blown to bits, you're not thinking like the writer is in regards to writing this character. There are obviously other things that are fun, right? There was one other one that said that Ben Grimm got a stubble, but he's made of rock. Yeah, that's been in the comic books. But have you ever seen weeds grow up between the rocks? Ben Grimm is a human turned into a rock type creature, but he's very broken up. It's like shingles, it's like cracks, like crazy paving. Well, weeds grow up through that, don't they? And he's a human, so of course he's human transformed. He's not solid rock. Where's he? How does he breathe? Why has he got? He's got lungs. You know what I mean? It's just he's super powered, cosmic. So of course, yeah, hair might grow through those rocks, and he has to get rid of it somehow. In the comic books, they showed the Human Torch once giving him a shave by lighting his finger and just going along the outside without scorching him. You know, those sort of things have been in the books for years and years and years. So you know, it's things like that. You have to think in the moment of the film what you're watching. And if you're not thinking along those lines, just think of it as entertainment. It's a comic book turned into a film. It's not trying to say this is real world. In fact, the film is based in a totally different universe to our own. So in other words, if this universe died and they hopped over to ours, then that would be different, right? Because they'd enter our universe and our real technology, you know, like mobile phones. This thing's set in the 60s on a totally different universe. So the story can be as well different to the one that we read on ourselves as kiddies in 1965. So, yeah, I had a great time with it. I gave it a score of 8. And I tell you what, the best probably review I read about it really was probably Josh's Through the Lens. I think he recognised that there was a style to this and there was an entertainment value to this, and there were bits that just didn't gel with him, but he recognised that it was to do more about the quality of what I'm watching rather than the believability of something, because it's a comic book. It's a comic book, guys. Don't get het up about this. It's supposed to be a fun film. Put popcorn in your mouth. Do you seriously think Bruce Willis can jump off the top of a building and with bare feet smash through glass and then walk across with fire? It's a film. Right? It's not real. So with that, I watched the FF. I enjoyed it. I gave it a solid 8 out of 10. I am not that prejudiced. There are many Marvel films I've gone, oh my God, what's this? Madam Web is one. Kraven the Hunter is another. The Eternals. Yeah. The Inhumans as a TV series. Oh, let's not go there. All diabolically bad. So at the end of the day, I just got great entertainment value out of it. So I am going to move on as much as I can without taking a break at the moment. My sister is here, but I will need to take breaks because I am incredibly tired. Concentration is quite difficult for me. I think I've covered what I wanted to say, other than one other thing, that griped me a little bit. We've had so many on YouTube as well that are in the areas of interest that I watch, computers and consoles, that have celebrated the 40th anniversary of the Spectrum, the Commodore 64, the Atari ST a couple of months ago. This Wednesday marked the 40th anniversary of the Amiga. How much was there on YouTube about the Amiga? Next to nothing compared to the news feeds I got about the Atari ST. And even one of the shows that I watch quite often, This Week in Retro, barely mentioned it. I don't know what it is. Is the Amiga too big? Is it we mention it too often so it's samey? I don't know, but it's a very big event for me because I bought it in the year it came out. Now I think it was something like the passing point was the 23rd, something like that. of July. I got mine in October, November of this year. So a number of changes had happened when I picked up mine. They'd up the RAM to 512 K because it only came with 256 initially. And some other little badge things occurred in regards to what you got it with, along with the packaging was changed slightly because mine came with the discs in a portfolio. It was like a cardboard portfolio, and I believe they just came in a plastic bag in the initial ones. And the monitor I bought was the proper Amiga one so there was a number of changes, but I still count it as, I call it day one, but it's the first model in the first batch that came into this country. So mine only had 256k until the next day, where the guy that I bought, the guys that I bought it off of, because they had a separate little business running off of a farm, believe it or not, it was a computer parts place, drove to my house and gave me the part and said, would they like them to install it? And I said, no, I know where it goes. It's the front panel. It's just an edge connector. I could do that. It's not a problem. Plugged it in and bang, 512. Kilobytes of RAM, which back in 1985 is quite a bit. Take away Kickstart and you've got 700. You see what I mean? You got 700. So you had nearly the 1 meg that most people craved for when the A500 came out, which was only about 1.5 to 2 years away. So I was a little bit dumbfounded in the fact that my alerts box wasn't full of Amiga stuff, and there wasn't all these live shows doing Amiga celebrations of, I'm just going to play Amiga games tonight, or going to celebrate the Amiga by just the games that came out on the year that it actually came out. All of that sort of stuff. Next to nothing. And yet it's one of the biggest machines and one of the shapers of machines of my career. I love that machine. And I loved it so much that I nearly not bankrupt myself, but I had I went overdrawn a lot in those first 2 years, buying everything that came out for it. I was hungry for anything. So yeah, bit disappointed. The Amiga celebration, 40th anniversary, 23rd of the 7th, was not celebrated like the ST was, or the Commodore 64 a couple of years back, and the Spectrum, and so forth and so forth. And very little in regards to live and play streams of games or anything. And you could say, why didn't you do it yourself then? But if anybody knows about me and my mother, it's very difficult for me to do live anything. So, with that out of the way, I'm going to do the shout-outs, and I'm going to take a little bit of a break, and we'll read out the comments. So, all these people, I just want to say thank you so much for your shout-outs. Absolutely wonderful to do this for me. You make me feel worthwhile, relevant, needed. And without further ado, these are not in any order. I hope I haven't missed anybody. They are Ian Hill, The Ramblings, Steve's Gaming Part 2, NFC Gamer and Vlogs, Sandra Clark, Colin Jones, aka Ponder, Mainmeister. Wow, got a comment from my mate, Mainmeister. Bloody hell. Muckman-Movies, Martroid, Wee Bob Art. Thank you so much. It really does mean something to me. I mention a lot of names in my blog, but it's not so that they do the same for me. I do it because I'm telling my nephew and nieces what I watched that brought me joy that week. And a lot of it is from my friends. They do content and I love it. And I want other people to love it as well. So I get excited. So shoot me if you want. But I get excited about those ones, and I want those ones to do well. I can't watch 1,000 YouTube videos. I've got a life where I have to cook and clean and all that sort of stuff. So it is restrictive, and why certain weeks some things are mentioned and other weeks not mentioned. It doesn't mean that anything is any less because I don't mention it. It's just I didn't have time to get round to it. Maybe the following week it's mentioned. You don't know, do you? So with that, I've mentioned the names, and we're going to go into the comments very, very shortly. I'm just going to check on my mum now, and then be straight back, and hopefully I'll look like I'm not. I've taken about 10 pints of vodka or something, which I've noticed can happen. So back in a mo. And here we go with the comments. They're not in any particular order, but I'm just very thankful that these people have taken their time to say whatever they want, really. And I'll read it out as best as possible. Word for word, pretty much. We start off with Wee Bob Art. He's put, watched along a few times this week, Del. Yeah, because the last one was like 2 hours, 50 odd minutes. It's the longest one I've ever done. And thanks for your kind words. I only ever really say what I think. And if somebody's done a video and it's moved me or prompted me to think, you know, you're going to get kind words, aren't you? It's just the way of the thing. I hope your Saturday is decent and the week ahead goes well. Ian Hill has mentioned a few times about the Dead Zone movie. Yeah, I mean, we both have watched that film. I watched it back in the 80s on VHS, Dead Zone movie, and I finished the audiobook today and watched the movie today, which was really great, if a bit dated. Felt like a long X-Files episode. You know what? That's the first time somebody's actually I've read sort of like try and do a simile. Yeah, it is like a long X-Files episode, actually. Anyway, question for next time, if I'm not too late. I watched Dangerous Animals last night, a decent B movie. But the main actor, Jay Courtney, looks a lot like Tom Hardy, which often confuses me. Watching The Dead Zone, Martin Sheen and Charlie Sheen have such a similar look sometimes, it's quite scary. Yeah, I noticed that about the Bridges brothers, actually, a little bit. It's quite scary. Is there an actor or actors that you often get confused with another actor? I'll tell you what, anybody that knows me knows I'm terrible with names. Can't even remember who was in a film. I get the name of the actor totally wrong. You know, sometimes that's just my brain going to mush. But let me think. I probably, thinking about it, get women wrong. So yeah, a famous one that I've gotten wrong, even on movie chats, is Natalie Portman and Keira Knightley. I know I've got those two mixed up no end of times. It's just, you shouldn't do, but it happens, you know. Terrible. Two totally different people, mothers and fathers, totally different mothers and fathers. But, you know, I suppose because they're involved in films, and in certain films they dress up the same, I find it sometimes difficult. With men it's a bit more difficult. I think the one that is prominent to me is James Franco and Theo James. Now, and I have to really think about this one. I think Theo James was in a something called Divergence. But I watched at one point Franco, not after a Spider-Man film, I think it was 147 days, and he was sort of like a mountaineer climber type thing, and he was a bit scruffy ridden. But there were certain facial expressions that really interfere with my looks and feelings towards Theo James. You might, I think James Franco is probably the bigger star of the two. I know that there are probably others, but I can't think of them at the moment. So I'm sorry. I hope that's okay. There are obviously, I think, more women ones. I know I've got Margot Kiddy. Oh, what's her surname? Confused with one, but their body work is very, very similar. So yeah, terrible. I hope that's good enough for you, wee Bob. I do apologise. That's very difficult for me to think of that on my on my feet, because I'm terrible with names, let alone what they look like. But salute to you, and please keep up the good work with your channel. Immensely impressed by the artwork, always have, and the thought-provoking movie ones that you're doing recently. I wish I could do what you do in regards to community questions and so forth. I'm terrible. I can sometimes comment. You mentioned about solitude in one of your videos just this week, and I gave some ideas of solitude films that come to my mind, like Robinson Crusoe on Mars and Enemy Mine. But you mentioned the big ones like Castaway and stuff. You're much more up now on films, and I'm like a fossil in retrospect. So I'm like a gnat, compared to some of the others that are out there. But I thank you for mentioning myself, even in the same line as you mentioned Ian Hill. I have great respect for. Definitely Muckman. My God. Sometimes I think that's reason why I don't do too much in my channel now about films, because I just don't feel my worth anymore. But hey, that'll probably change. So we'll move on, and actually the next one, this is not totally coincidence, is Ian Hill, The Ramblings, who I said I do a live with Wednesday, and I hope that continues. I'd hate that to stop, but it is all down to Ian. It's not down to me. And he's put, "Hi Delboy, hope you and your mother are okay. I enjoyed our live stream on Wednesday. I couldn't do it without you. Of course, you still managed to get a mention of the composer you always mention. I fell right into that trap." Yeah. We have a little joke, and I mentioned one of my favourite composers. There are many, but this particular one I've got a big collection of, along with Ennio Morricone. So it's the other one that I mention a lot. I sent him a film of one that is sort of like a guilty pleasure, which is The Edge, a film called The Edge. And he watched it, and he was mentioning about the beauty of the scenery and how it's a character-driven thing, and he really enjoyed it and all that sort of stuff. And I said, in Wednesday, what do you think of the music? Do you think it fitted in? And he went, yeah, I think it fitted in. If I remember rightly, it was very, very nice and melodic and all that sort of stuff. I said, yeah, Jerry Goldsmith does a great score. And he went, oh, you bastard! Because that's what I try and get in each week. That particular name of a composer. So he fell into the trap. That's what he's talking about there. I'm now back to 2 visits a week by the nurse. Things have gone backwards, so I understand the need for this. Sores have broken out on both legs now, and both lot of toes, and they will not heal. They may try some new dressing treatment, but she said that the one she would try is too expensive, and they won't let her use it. I just have to accept the situation. Yeah, this is something I've heard an awful lot, actually. When you get to a certain age, they think it's too expensive a treatment for the life expectancy of the person we're putting it on. So we won't go down that route. They'll have to suffer. And I find that terrible. It's the same with operations, joint operations, ball joint changes, hip operations, all of that. They look at your age and go, nah, not worth it. Rather than it's too dangerous to do it. And all down to money, all wrong, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if you have noticed, but on the news, the media and YouTube, those who got the most attention are the angry, shouty people. I get to the point where I've had enough of them. So predictable. They need to see that there is much more to life than tribal arguments. So into the world of films I escape. You sent me some great films, which I enjoyed. The highlight was The Three Fugitives from 1989. It was, for me, the best performance by Nick Nolte I've seen. It brought a big smile to my face, yet was also very emotional. What more can you ask from a comedy? Yeah, I sent him a couple of comedies. They were Throw Mama from the Train, which is my love of Hitchcock in a comedy. Three Fugitives, Paphos is in that film. That's not a character. It's a type. There's a lot of pathos, a lot of emotion, a lot of comedy and emotion. They show that in Only Fools and Horses episodes, where there has to be a dramatic, sometimes sad shift, but then a comedy element to break up that. So yeah, Three Fugitives was great. And of course I sent the one, The Edge, which I mentioned before. Absolutely fantastic film. So I sent him 3 good films, to be quite honest. And I think it made him actually go out and buy one of them. He actually bought one of the 3 films. He hasn't got it in his collection. And he decided, yeah, I want that. I went out and bought it. So absolutely marvellous. The other film that stood out for me was a film called The Blue Max from 1966. A film I remember my dad taking me to see at the cinema. I would have been 6 years old. I love war films, so I got to watch quite a lot of them. George Peppard was great. Must have been an early film for him. Also good to see James Mason. He talks about James Mason a lot. James Mason in yet another great role set in 1918. It showed how dominated the early years of flying were by the upper classes. It was the same with the English. They even talked about chivalry and attitude that would change with the advent of total war. The effects of the First World War changed the world. New ideas and concepts were born. Also a time which would see the rise of fascism and communism. The Blue Max is an outstanding film, and I dare say I admit it's a great score from a certain composer we don't mention. He was talking about it on Wednesday. He said, he saw the Blue Max, and I said, oh, what did you think of the music in that one then? I mean, we just talked about The Edge, and he went, yeah, don't tell me. And he looked on the back of the box and he called me a bastard. Because again, it was done by the same composer. That's the sort of fun we have. We have a little bit of a barter. So my question this week is, what makes a great film score that elevates film and makes them great works of art? Wow. Do you know what? That's probably the one question that most people avoid trying to answer. And me being a person that tries to play the piano and understand music, and have listened to many types of music, I'm very eclectic with my collection. I've tried to work out myself, and I know that John Williams, who I've got a big respect for, but I do think sometimes he's mentioned too much, a bit of overexposure. They've always said a good composer recognizes where music is needed and music is not needed, because there needs to be a balance. There needs to be scenes that the emotion of the actual acting comes across, and others where it needs just that little musical kick to actually make the scene work. So I would say, not only is it as a theme got to be sort of catchy, it's memorable. I mean, everybody knows the Superman theme, everybody knows the Star Wars theme, everybody knows the Jaws theme. They're catchy, and they're like earworms that go into your head. But there are other themes that are going on in the film that complement that theme and are subtly different or totally drastically different, addressed in the film. My sister always turned around and said she didn't get music scores because if you play it on a turntable like a record and you play it, some of the music is just inaudible. It's not coherent because it works with a scene, and I agree with that. But for me, I listen to that music and I can picture the scene in my head, beat for beat. And it makes that track more enjoyable for me to listen to, especially when it's not really got a catchy or sort of like memorable riff or melody to it. Yeah. So I would say really music is very important, and it's important that the composer recognize when it's needed, when it's not. Regardless of the budgetary restraints, I mentioned to Ian a long time ago that Escape from the Planet of the Apes doesn't have much music in it. And the reason for that is they hardly had enough money to pay for it. There is 30 minutes of music in a 2-hour film. And yet Planet of the Apes, a nearly 2-hour film, has got well over an hour. But then that had the money to pay the composer to write the music. So you had to be sort of like strict on where he put the music, because he only had a certain amount of time and a certain amount of money that they were paying him. Otherwise, it was off of his own back that he did it. And certain composers, doesn't matter whether you love your art or not, are going to give up weeks of their time to a project that you're not going to get paid for. So he says, all my best to you and have a reet grand time, which is his little catchphrase. And I'll say salute to you, my friend, which is mine. And thank you so much for allowing me on a Wednesday. I don't know what my life would be like if I wasn't there on a Wednesday. It really does break up my week and give me something to look forward to. Makes me also watch films wherever I can. So we'll move on. We'll move to Steve's Gaming, Part 2. My friend Steve, who I always give my salute to. Steve, you fantastic person. You little shit. Fucking hate you, you little bastard. You're too fucking good, you git. Sorry, I have to do my little rant at Steve. It's the law. So don't pay too much attention to it. Let's see what he's put. He's put, hi Del. Great blog, as always. Thank you. By the way, did you realise last week was the 56th anniversary of Apollo 11? And Neil and Buzz stepping onto the moon, and Michael Collins orbiting and hoping they get back. Do you know what? It totally shit my mind. I was alive when that happened, but, wasn't really of an age to understand it. He says, I still remember my mum getting me up in the middle of the night to see their first steps on another celestial body, and that memory is still strong with me even 56 years later. 56 years, though. Jeez, it makes you feel old. I hope your mum is okay and you're managing things without too much stress or financial worries. Anyway, do you know what I'm watching right now? No. Well, I'd say the Formula One in this particular instance, but no, I've dug out Star Trek TOS. That's the original series. I have the complete box, all the series. Yes, a pox on seasons. It's series, haha, and it's remastered and had updated special effects. You haven't said whether it's the DVD or the Blu-ray, but I'm taking it's the Blu-ray. I'm really enjoying it. I guess I forgot how good the original series was. Anyway, on to question one. What a series Star Trek is. I mean, I can't mention enough how many times I've bought the motion picture. I've seen the TV series thousands of times. I'm sure that Steve knows of Down the Rabbit Hole's passion for Star Wars and Star Trek. We all come from different backgrounds, but we all have a common interest when it comes to Star Trek. So, on to the questions. Question 1. The Spectrum Next issue number 3 Kickstarter is going well. It hit the target in only 7 minutes, and it's now hit all of the stretch goals and is on 1.5 million with 23 days to go and probably more stretch goals. So my question is, are you buying one? They are doing a really nice magenta one too. I mean, surely you have to. You bought a crappy Switch too, so surely this is more worthy of your money. Ha ha. If only you could look at life like that, isn't it? I mean, I bought my Switch because I sold my original. I have no Spectrum to sell to get a Spectrum Next. And I've always mentioned that the Spectrum is a non-nostalgia machine for me, but a powerhouse of a machine with 100% respect from me in regards to its place in history and what it can do and what it can do now. So I don't have that Spectrum Maxi that came out from, what was it, Retro Games last year with the rubber keys. I haven't got a Spectrum Vega. I haven't got a 48K Spectrum. I haven't got a +2, a +3, none of it. But I continue to have total respect for what it is by watching your channel and people's friends requesting me to play games. In fact, a lot of them have been Spectrum games and they've been first-time players, because I know of a number of friends that were around that were on the Spectrum and playing it, and I used to go around and play on it as well. But I never got that itch to go, I need to buy one of those and get one and take it home. I had a Commodore 64, so I didn't really need one or want one. But there are games on there I'm totally jealous of that were never on the Commodore 64, and they generally tended to be of the 3D variety, where the processor on it was much better at drawing vector lines, filled in vectors, or just isometric levels of games which required faster processor speeds to do them. Still shit at sound until later on, and then it's bearable. Commodore 64 will still be my choice. So the answer is no, really. I'm not buying one. Magenta would be the one I would buy. I've seen it. After you mentioned this, I have looked, and it looks a good machine. And the Magenta one in particular. It showed up in a few of my feeds as well. Question 2. What one food do you really dislike and will never eat it? For me, it's pasta. Can't stand the stuff. All the best, mate, and love to your mum, and I'll pass that on. Yeah, and you mentioned the one I don't like, pasta. Can't stand pasta. Oh. Curly pasta, stringy pasta, all of that. Ugh. Nah. It's like eating slimy worms. No. I don't like ravioli either. I love the mince, I love the sauce. Can't stand the pasta bit. Oh. that. Oh, you know, in a pie, pastry, yeah. Pasta, no. Might seem a bit strange to people, but that's just the way I am. I've never really liked them. So that answers that. And thank you very much, because that answers his question. Absolutely brilliant. Now it's gotten really warm all of a sudden, so I'm going to just splash my face. So won't be a minute.
And we go past my friend Steve in my salute and move on. And thank you very much for your questions, and move to LFC Gamer and Vlogs. And my friend here who does blogs himself has said, another enjoyable blog, matey. As always, I hope both yourself and your mum have had a great week despite the weather being a mixed bag. I love the Del Boy shorts you did on Space Invaders and Mooncrester, and I'm sure you've made another one or two by the time it comes to Sunday. And as they say, it's short but sweet, so well done. Questions for the blog, because I'm too polite. Number one, what would your dream five-a-side footy team be, past or present players? It can be from anyone, not just limited to Coventry players, because yes, he knows I'm a Coventry supporter. My dad would love that question, and I wish I knew more about football. My time with football has been me going with my dad to watch Coventry in many places, including seeing them win the FA Cup. And I've watched England games, of course, and I've lived in Manchester and been to the Manchester the VIP box for certain games, and those were at times where Manchester were flying high, and there was a Premiership. So with that sort of like in mind, it'd probably be a mix of eras. I recognise the word and the player Messi, and I think everybody therefore would probably have Messi in their lineup, being a striker. And me watching the World Cups was always in awe of Pele, who was a forward, possibly a striker, but a forward. So there's two there. I've seen over the years Beckham curl a ball, and the importance of free kicks just outside the area and things like that. So he's a midfielder, so I would probably have Beckham. My dad would talk about the skills of Bobby Moore. Years and years he'd talk about him. And of course, what a sad loss we had with Bobby Moore leaving us. And he was a defender. So, of course, I think I'd probably have him. And then when it comes to goalkeepers, and I've seen Shilton and, Grogovic and a few others through the years, I'd probably go with Schmeichel, because I saw him play some absolute fantastic games when I went to the VIP box in Manchester, and he was desperately needed, as all the other players were, but they all had their off days, and that meant that he was critical to him to have his A game for every single game. No good having everybody an A game and your goalie not, because there are going to be times, where they'll break down your defences, and if you're not on your A game, it don't matter what, you need a goalie. So yeah, is that good enough for you for five-a-side? There's so many, I could have mentioned Greavesy, couldn't I, and Shearer and a number of others, but I've got my doubts with them. Yeah,
So, there are forces of nature as well. You got Kenny Dalglish and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, I'm going to stick with what I said and hope that's good for you. Number 2, is there a particular European city that you've never been to but has always intrigued you? Mine would be Amsterdam. Dutch people are some of the friendliest I've encountered, as one of my former work colleagues was from there. The buildings and the canal that runs through the city is such a beautiful sight. And we're not talking about the red light district. If you know, then you know. I can't forget about Ajax, pronounced Ajax for those who don't know. So Ajax, yeah, and their incredible fans and stadium. Oh my God! I've been to Germany. I've been to Switzerland. Haven't been to France, believe it or not. And obviously the Eiffel Tower and Notre Dame intrigued me. The Notre Dame was just such a shame. I remember that when that went up in flames. I suppose Italy intrigues me. Venice would be interesting to go see. An old city like that. Been in many films as well. Beautiful looking place. That might be quite good. Some beautiful people from the Czech Republic. I've been to places, like I say, they're gorgeous. I mean, I'd like to go anywhere, to be quite honest. But I've settled on America that I've been to on my holidays because of the food, generally, and because of their similarity to us. I was a big film and TV watcher, and therefore I saw a lot of westerns and saw a lot of programs set in New York and Los Angeles and Texas and all of those. And the films, a lot of them are set in across the whole of America. And I've already said that the next big thing that I want to go and see is either Niagara Falls or Mount Rushmore. Niagara Falls being really Canada, but Mount Rushmore, border of Canada and America. Love that because it's got in one of my favourite films, North by Northwest, where it ends on Mount Rushmore. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question. And number 3, you put, finally, what is your favourite jacket spud filling? Mine is either tuna, sweet corn and mayo, or chili con carne with a sprinkling of grated cheddar. Yeah, you can't beat the simple ones. Cheddar, baked bean filling. I've started to add mince with baked beans and have a sort of like a stewy type sauce and put that on the top of a jacket spud. That's been nice. Because it's like having mince and mash. And anybody who's had mince and mash know you mince the mash with the with the mince, and you've got a sort of like a gelatin type food you're eating, but it tastes gorgeous. So yeah, there's that. So that's your questions, and thank you very much, NFC. If you haven't gone and seen his blog, please go and do so. He is more than a blog, but that's the thing that I watch him for. Absolutely brilliant. And then we've got Sandra Clark, who's recently been going in to see LFC. I think she's been going to go and see Mainmeister a lot. And it's been a joy to talk in my blog with some of her comments. And it's got, hello, Del Boy, please give my love to your mum and sister. Yeah, of course I will. Question, if I may ask you, what is your most played game on your Switch 2 right now? I know you have little time, but maybe you've had time to play something. Right. Yeah, it has been very difficult. It's still there, look, hooked up. And on occasion, I still put Mario Kart on it. But there's a race game that came out on the same day called, I think, Fast Forward or something like that, which is a bit like Wipeout. And I paid for that the day that the Switch 2 came out because it's got some enhancements to it. And I still love that game. Wow, I play that a lot. But I have put backwardly compatible games into the Switch 2 to see what they're like with the new enhancements. Mario Odyssey looks great. Luigi's Mansion 3 looks great. The Pikmins don't look too bad at all. Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and the etc. etc. They all speak for themselves. They're fantastic. One of the most paid for out of the shop games I bought, which was Ghosts and Goblins. I played that an awful lot. It's so rock hard though. My God. But I am interested in buying the new Donkey Kong when it comes out. I'll probably get that. But it's going to be a 70 quid price, so you have to think about these things. But I am enjoying my time with it. So thank you very much for that question. You continue. I take my Switch 2 to work and play it at my lunch break. I'm still playing Cyberpunk 2077. I bet that's brilliant on there. I was thinking about you and your mum. I mean no offence by this. Oh, don't worry. No, let's have a read. But do you feel there will come a time where it will be better to place her in a care home? I'm not saying you should, but maybe these things need to be thought ahead. As much as you love her and want to help her, you can't have her make your life one big grind. That's where resentment may come in. That's an interesting one. I actually answered that one because it came through and I read the last bit, and it's what I didn't want you to hang on to. And it's definitely one I wouldn't cut out of this blog. But the nursing home is what we're trying to avoid all the time. You'd have to sell this house to pay for the nursing because there's no power of attorney. I would be out on the streets. I'd have nowhere to live. There'd be no legacy for anybody. Nephew, nieces, all of that sort of stuff. So it is a difficult one. But there'll be no discussion about nursing for a long time. Something we're trying to avoid like the plague. So I'm going to say salute and thank you so much for that. It's an interesting question and I loved it to bits. Thank you. No problem. Just going to take another short break. I'm sure you can tell I'm starting to feel a bit lightheaded again. Won't be a moment from now.
And I'm back, and we've just had a visitor from down the road, the Keoghs. And we were just talking about my mum, and we're talking about my sister's daughter having a child, expected in October, November. And of course, the Keoghs have recently had a couple of deaths. And of course, Kay, who was at the door with her son, fell over and has got a neck brace on. So it went on for quite a while, and lovely conversation, but just goes to show that with as much that's going on in my life, things are going badly in other people's, and I must remember that, which I will try and do. But on with the conversations that have come through, and we get to Colin Jones, aka Ponder, somebody who I have great respect for. I love his blog. Always keeps me on my toes. Not that I'm doing very well there at the moment. If it was a tennis match, I think it'd be like 40-15 or something like that. Advantage, Colin. But let's have a look. He's put, your talk of work makes me even so thankful I drive trains for a living. Yeah. I don't know what that would be like with me being away, because I'd be away from home, and that would put a lot of pressure on my sister. A few hours may not seem much, but time is valuable, and in this case the logistics were challenging too. Kudos to both of you. Sending my regards to your mum, of course. Thank you very much. I pass on all of these, by the way. I remember the in-cinema snack sellers, and the first thing that came to my mind, you did say as I was typing this, albatross. Yes, of course. Wonderful. We're too old. We're too old, Colin. I also used to enjoy the Saturday morning cinema, a bargain at 10p entrance at the time. I keep mentioning it was 50p, but ours included food. I think it could have been 10p if you didn't have anything. I'll have to think back to that. I've got it in my diary. I did keep a diary back then. We spend as little as possible on greeting cards. They get thrown out next day for most anyway. I think we get more cynical as we get older because we see more bullshit as time goes by and recognise it for what it is. Yeah, can't disagree with that. Quicks, yeah, sorry, had to be said. Yeah, okay, totally get it. Altering past key events is always going to be unpredictable. Thankfully, it's totally impossible in reality. Yeah, I think that's the talking about Microsoft, possibly. On the 10-year-old question, the first thing I'd do is question reality. See what I mean? I didn't really think about that. I just took it literally that it happened and that I, doesn't come into where it came from. Then I'd scream. Then I'd have to go through all the shit again. Then I'd sit out to destroy certain celebrities so Operation U-Tree would never be necessary. Yeah, I was thinking more about computers and stuff. Probably shows my likelihood to talk more about technology than I do films and TV and everything else, even though I see them as equal importance in my life. I've always looked at people's past as a bit weird. There are people in my life that talk about films are not important, TV are not important, computers were, going out on my bike was. Yeah, there were people that were sporty and came in and played games. There were people that were bullied for being the weight that they were and stayed inside, and computers weren't always available to have on the main set, and so the telly would be on. Then there would be your father's influence in regards to music, and your mother's, and what was being played in the house at the time, and all of that sort of stuff. And it all depends on confidence, free reign, all sorts of stuff. I always think of myself, I had a good childhood. It was just ruined by little people. It's made me have a lot of lack of confidence. It sometimes has meant that I'm grateful for people around in my life, that I go over the top a little bit in regards to showing that, and that in the past has been used against me, as it's been shown in some of the comments of the past. I'm not saying who and what and when that's happened. It's just happens, and you can't avoid it. You can't ignore it. It's a statement. Okay, my question this time: name a major company you believe won't exist in 20 years. Concentrate. Okay. Thinking industry-wise. Let me think. So, we were talking about films and TV just now. Will Sky be around as a satellite broadcaster? No. I think that'll be gone. Even the BBC, as we know it, will change in the next 20 years. Ooh. Electric cars. Will Shell Oil be what they are now? That's a good one. Shell. Will Shell be around in 20 years' time? That's an unknown. I'm going to put that one at the end. I'll tell you what, three come to mind, grouped together. Kodak,
Nikon, Canon cameras. They've gone from mirrored, to mirrorless, digital. There's knocking out Kodak, and now smartphones are getting so good that I think there's been a huge drop in even professionals using cameras. Now, whether they'll be around because they are a major provider to cinema, not sure. But I'd say that they're more likely to because I think that's Panavision more than anything, that they will probably be gone as a consumer thing, in much the same way that we use oil for other things other than cars and Shell. I can't think of any others. Oh, there's retailers I could. Even now, Poundland's, I mean, the likelihood of Poundland being around in the next 2 years is not going to happen, I don't think. 20 years. We had this question before the turn of the millennium. What companies will be around and thriving after the millennium? And we all had Nintendo. That'll be around. Accountants, they'll be around. Sports people, they'll be around. Even though everybody complains about it, carpenters and bricklayers were always listed as being, they'll be around after the millennium. Still going to need houses. All of that sort of stuff. So, it's a great question. I loved it. Thank you very much, because it makes me think. Salute to you, my friend, and keep doing all your stuff. You would be sadly missed if you'd gone. My God, I don't know quite what I'd be like. We get to my friend Mainmeister, another person I don't want to see go. Thanks for the kind comments, fella, he says. I guess like everything, the more you do it, the more relaxed and used to it you become. You're right, though. It's harder than you think, playing games you've never played before whilst trying to be entertaining and engage with the audience. Don't beat yourself up over the friends pick a game thing. Everything does start to get a bit stale after a while. That's why I ended up stopping live streams for a bit, as I found myself doing them to effectively please the viewers rather than doing it for myself. Actually, no, that's totally against the grain of what I was saying. It was more to do with the fact that that I was bothering people, asking them for it, and then it came to me to get the product out, calling it a product, and not doing it in the time scale because of my mum. That was the reason behind that. I'm still thinking of bringing it back. It's not gone. It's only at round 2. It's just purely down to, I don't, whether people think it's stale or not. I never thought it was stale. It was more to do really with possibly opening it up to different friends and how those friends might feel if I drop them. That came to mind. I don't like upsetting people, and things like that I thought knocking it on the head was best. That's pretty much it. So we're doing it to effectively please the viewers rather than doing it for yourself. I get bored of doing the same types of videos over and over again, and that's what I have, about 40,000 playlists. Some work, some don't. Why don't you do a few top 10 videos? Best C64 games, best worst 10 games, worst Spectrum games, etc. These are always entertaining. Keep doing what you're doing though, mate. I may not comment much, but I do watch and enjoy your stuff. Well, that's a very nice thing to say. I must admit, I only know people are watching by a comment. I've had in my life people say I've watched and then it's cropped up something and it's proved they're not. Do you know what I mean? It's just they don't want to offend. That hurts. I'd rather them just be clean and say, I haven't had time or whatever. I'd rather have that. I know that you watch. That this isn't a slur at yourself. We do have our ding dongs. You know, I certainly try not to conflict when I'm doing something live with somebody else. The argument of, well, two different audiences doesn't ring bells with me, because you can't say if you've got 4,000 subs that 20 or 30 of them aren't also interested in films. Then there's a dilemma. Which one do I watch? Am I more interested in games? Am I more interested in films? The thing I don't like about it is that if somebody has got more subs than you, the person that's the smallest is the one that suffers, because that's the one you're going to skip. So the bigger one, that's why they've got 50 people watching, and then the other side, you're only watching, they've got 8, right? And yet they had 17 the week before, and so where are those others that have gone? It doesn't take rocket science to work out that there's one side that beats the other, but it's a negligible thing. It's something that, you know, I just turn around and go, look, you know, it happens. What I'm trying to say is, when I'm doing my live streams, and remember, I haven't done a live stream in a long time, so take that into effect, right? Because the other stuff I'm on is not based on me. Okay, I advertise a week in advance, right? It's when somebody then organises something on that day, and it was done on that day, and then they're sub to you, that you go, why? I advertised a week ago. You know what I mean? And I do understand, well, it's probably because it was the only day that was possible. I know from certain people's personalities that's not true. And it could possibly be they said that they were subbed to you and they weren't subbed at all, didn't even know about it. That's when that opens that can of worms. So, yeah, it's nothing now. I'm more into just being interactive with my friend than anything else, and the live stuff has gone to the wayside, and Denny and I have spoken, and we are going to do something again, and all the time when we are thinking about doing it, we'll be picking a day that does not interfere with anybody else, past or present. It's just, that's how I work. That's how I do it. I want to grow. I don't want to diminish. I don't want to spend 3 weeks researching a TV show and remembering all my stuff, only for it to then be watched by 3 people. Waste of time. Absolute waste. And the stuff that me and Denny do require interaction. It needs people to ask the questions in there and to give their memories to make it go. Otherwise, it's just us reminiscing between ourselves and somebody watching it 6 months down the line. Some things require an audience. That's why you go live. I do it for that reason. But spoken enough on that subject, and it's always a pleasure to do anything. And it's always a pleasure when somebody else is doing something around you. That's how I look at it. I love everything that everybody does. It's just me that avoids conflict in times or arguments. Just don't like it. Simple as that. Fantastic, matey. You're always in my mind. You're always there for me, and I'm always there for you if you ever need me. Doesn't matter what's going on in my life, I'll do what I can. Just I can't drop everything at the drop of a hat anymore. That's gone, and that makes me sad. But you're always top of the list of me stuff to watch, which is why sometimes I get totally frustrated that I have to watch it on catch up It's just life. Salute, my friend. Moving on to Muckman-Movies. And Muckman-Movies, what a guy he is. All right, Del Boy, hope you had a nice weekend and your mum is okay. I went to Dublin at the weekend for a friend's 50th birthday, but on Sunday morning we went to the stunning Stella Cinema to see My Cousin Vinny. Oh, what a film, My Cousin Vinny, at the weekend for My Cousin Vinny. It was renovated back in 2017. I'm taking it this is the cinema, not the film. And was also voted as the best independent cinema in the UK. Yes, it was, and Ireland. By Time Out magazine. This all sets me thinking. What is your favourite independent cinema, and is it still in business? I'm quite lucky to have the Cottage Road Cinema at the Hyde Park Cinema quite close, by which are both stunning in their own ways and still going strong today. It is a great shame that I mentioned this, because for many years, and including the years that I turned around and said about going to childhood cinema, the Cannon Odeon that was in my hometown closed down about 4 or 5 years ago. It's a listed building. It's built on the side of the Cromwell Lodge, and basically that's an old Tudor building. And the cinema was actually the theatre that was built onto the original hotel, and therefore they filled in the top tier part, made that Cinema 2, and the bottom was Cinema 1 for years. And Cinema 1 had Dolby Stereo, and it was mono upstairs. Less people. In fact, the way that the films rotated round was what was in screen 1 went into screen 2 after about the second or third week, unless it was Star Wars. And then it was always on there, and the new films actually went up to screen 2, and you had it in mono, and you paid the same money even though it was mono. Interesting times. The cinema was badly managed. It still had cigarette ashtrays in the back of the chairs all the way up until 2007. The floors were sticky. They still had people selling chalk ices and stuff all the way up until I think 2005. I don't remember seeing them after that point, which is then when things got into the meal deals, popcorns and all of that sort of stuff. And then they built a cinema inside the precinct, which is the shopping precinct, made a whole new floor. Took 10 years to build that because of council money. And the car parking and all of the road changes that were needed outside. And I think that was called the Lighthouse now. And therefore that cinema closed down. Now I saw Blade Runner, an independent cinema in Oxford, right next to the hotel that is one of the oldest hotels in England, I believe. I've forgotten what it's called. It was a great hangout for people that went to the universities of Oxford. I think that's still going. The last time I went there was 2012, so I'm not sure if it's still there, because that's a good 13 years ago now. And everything else. If I go to Bicester, they've got a VUE. If I go to Milton Keynes, they've got VUEs and all sorts of other ones. They're all big multiplexes. So it's sad, but Little Cinema has been out of my life now for too many years. And I do say that with a heavy heart, because I used to love them. Don't get me wrong, back when I was watching the cinema in the 90s and the 80s, I wanted our cinema to be just like the big multiplexes and have the comfy seats and the air conditioning and the Dolby digital sound and all of that sort of stuff, the THX sound from the projectionist. All of that sort of stuff, new curtains, the better screen. that could handle wide, because sometimes they projected onto the curtains. They couldn't get any curtains to go wide enough on set. So I am in two minds, but I'd do anything to have our old cinema back. It's just, it was mismanaged. Hope that was a good answer for you. A sad one, but a sign of the times. And the last comment is from Martroid. Thank you. I'd salute to Muckman-Movies, and please go and visit his channel. Martroid has put, just caught the first episode of your new Del Boy Shorts, Del. The concept, it's a slick little format, though I've got to say it's a bit surreal watching something so brief from the guy who usually drops full-length epics. Yeah, I tried my very best with it. It's funny, I've had one knockback by one person who basically said, and I quote, but I won't mention their name, that I loved the first two, didn't like the third one, because it was excruciatingly painful to watch you play. You played so badly. The whole point of the shorts is to give you the gist of the game. And I've never turned my round and said that I'm the best game player. And I wanted to show at least things like cutscenes and all of that sort of stuff to give you an idea of the game and to make it look like it's enjoyable to play. And you can never predict how, whether you're going to be good on the recording or not. And I'm not one of these people that do an intro, stop, record the game, do really well, and tag it on. It's all in one, which makes it the 7 minutes that I actually recorded it with no double back. So you can imagine I didn't play for 5 hours and record the best one and tag it on. It was my second play, because the first play was the test to make sure that the sound was all right. And the second one, I did better, believe it or not. I still did poorly. I was greedy and took liberties at trying to get a better score and all of that sort of stuff. And to be quite honest, there are people that can glide through that game and get to the 10th level without losing a life. And to be quite honest, I used to be one of those people. But if you don't play it for 10, 12 years or whatever, or once or twice every 5 years like me, then you're going to doom to fail. It'll be the same when I played Ghosts and Goblins. I used to, on one credit, get all the way to about halfway to the end of the second level without losing a life. I put it on now, I'll probably die in the graveyard. It's just, that's how it is. I'm rusty. I'm more about talking about them than I am playing them, probably because of my age. But I haven't taken offense by it. It's just when I hear the words painful, I think that's a strong word. Makes me feel like, should I do any more? We'll see. I got good feedback, and it's been watched by lots of people, and pretty much everybody's turning around and saying, I really enjoyed this. So we'll see. With that, that's the end of the comments there. And we'll go to what I watched on YouTube. So I'll just minimize this and bring up my notes. There we go. And as you know, there is the big four that I watched on YouTube. They are This Week in Retro, Tech Mode, Gadget Show, and Chronologically Gaming. This Week in Retro, Saturday, 10 o'clock, always the same. Had its 3 subjects. Next up, round 3, which is about the Spectrum. Next, our preloaded retro consoles legitimate. Interesting concept in regard to the fact that somebody has been taken in Italy, I believe, to court in regards to reviewing handheld device that comes preloaded with an SD card with games on it. Okay, so that's an interesting one, that one, because to be quite honest, if you want to know who I'm at fault with that, it's the company that supplied it. because if they are shipping abroad, they should actually look at the laws of the person that they're shipping it to, take the SD card out. Simple as that. They won't do that. They'll just have them. They've got them all boxed. They just send them out. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't think the person that was reviewing it is really at fault. Although, to be quite honest, you'd have to say you're naive if you didn't realise that what you've got on that SD card has got illegal ROMs on it. So, yeah, it swings and roundabouts. And Mark Twain, the missing Apple computer, which I think is talking about the Apple II GS's last iteration, which I believe was on the drawing board, never went out. They had an interesting discussion that brought the Amiga back into play, about where we were going with computers and why the PC took dominance. But I have to say that I was disappointed that This Week in Retro did not talk about the Amiga's 40th anniversary. Maybe they'll do it next week, I don't know. It wasn't even in the community section. So I was a bit disappointed, really, to be quite honest. But I still watch it week for week. It's still one of the most slickest and best places to get news that you're going to come across. And next is on my line is Techmoan. And Techmoan is now on his weekly voyage, where before there was a couple of weeks where he wasn't there. This week it was, I bought the wrong screen, but can I make it work? Because the last couple of weeks he's been talking about projectors. The screen he's talking about, therefore, is a screen that is floor mounted and then motorized, brings it up for a projector to beam onto. And there are many different types. There are ones with tabs, which are stiffer on the edges, and therefore the whole board is stiff. And so you don't have those wrinkles and creases that would show up because you're beaming an image onto a wall, basically a white panel. So that was interesting. Not that I've got projectors in mind at the moment, but it's always nice to know what hardware is there. The Gadget Show did nothing, but they're working on some big projects at the moment. And Chronologically Gaming continues his run of December 1982, which will take some time to get through because it is the lead up to Christmas in one of the biggest years that console gaming ever had, and computer gaming. He also did a backlog revisitation of 1975 because there's been some more footage found of mechanical devices from 1975, just at the dawn of microprocessors being involved. So there's the top 4 that I watch. After that, I watched a channel called Star Wars Comic Collector, and he did an episode called The Amazing Facts Behind the Marvel Adaptation of Empire Strikes Back. Yes, this is the differences between a comic adaptation and a film. And Marvel did a lot of these, as did DC. And what you need to understand is they would have written and started drawing that before the film was ever released. And there will be therefore differences to the plot that was going on in the film version to the officially published product that comes out as a comic book. Because they have to draw well in advance. I mean, you draw a 52-page comic, you can't exactly do that in a week, and do it on the release of before the release of the film. So they would have started that project before the final edit was even, and it would have been well before the press got to see a film. So that was interesting. I like that story. The next one was More Fun Fixing It. That's the channel name, More Fun Fixing It. They did a stock sale at the National Computer Museum in Bletchley. Now, Bletchley is just up the road from me. It's before Oxford, and that's where the computer that cracked the Enigma code is. They regularly have a sale of 8-bit computers, or lesser and more, and they're in various conditions, working, non-working, and this guy bought a PET computer, a Commodore PET, from 1977, no word of a lie, 50 quid. marvellous. And there were Amigas there of equal value, 50 quid, 50 quid. They were mostly A500s. There were some like 1200s, Amstrads, Oryx, etc., etc. All depends on your poison, but that was great to watch. Really enjoyed that. Then you got a channel called Retro Gadget Man. He did a Commodore PET, the most horrible example he's ever seen. Yes, this machine had looked like it had been chucked down the stairs, put into a crusher, and half the bits were missing. The board had broken traces, no display in the top apart from the attachments that would go onto the tube, etc., etc. Doing it as a pet project, pun intended, that's looking really good show that I'm really looking forward to watching more of. Then there's a channel called More Fun Fixing It, which was... No, we've just done that one. Sorry, Retro Gadget Man is the next one. Sorry, I do apologise for that. It's Retro Gadget Man. He did a Commodore PET... Sorry. Yeah, I've done that one as well. So I've done Mobile Fun Fixing It is the stock sale. Retro Gadget Man is the Commodore PET. I do apologise. Like I said, my writing's terrible here. Do apologise. The next one is Century 21. Yes, that's right. If you've ever seen Terrorhawks, you'll know at the beginning they used to have this announcement. It says, Terrorhawks, stay on your channel. This is an emergency. And there used to be this computer-generated sort of like... computer game and all the puppet scene and all of this sort of stuff. Most of that stuff was done with old style animation, but they did use computers for some of the models, so it was in its very early days. Terrorhawks was still that program that I was watching even though I'd moved out of school. It's around about early 80s. Yeah, so I was in secondary school, probably first or second year. So it was still prominent to me. And then there's a channel called Games You Loved. And that was talking about the Kickstarter, the Spectrum third Kickstarter campaign. It's called the SV3, by the way. And that gave more information about what the differences are between the Kickstarter 2 and Kickstarter 1 campaign, what the revisions are of the hardware. So that's all of Watched on YouTube, and I'll be back in a moment.
Yeah, and we'll move on to films, TV, soundtracks on YouTube. And like I say, apologies for making those mistakes there. I lost my place. But those things happen. It's, I do this sort of like live, no editing, all that sort of stuff. I just pause when I have to go and check my mum. So the first one we got on here is Ian Hill, The Ramblings, who I do a live with on Wednesday. He's done my top 5 comedy films from 2003 to 2009. Doctor Who review, Time Lash. X-Files review, season 4, episode 13. He did a live with me. And I think he's got a few upcomings. He's got some SFX. He might have actually, I think he's doing that tomorrow, so I don't think it's live today. He might have done his Blue Max by now, but I'll check all that out. But those are the ones that I've watched, every single one of them. Absolutely fantastic. I had a great time with that. Salute, my friend. Thank you so much for all your support, and I can't wait till this Wednesday. Love talking about films and TV. And next we've got Mondo Chelovek Movies, who's done a couple of videos this week. He's done an amazing gift from Connor Gray. It's always great to get a gift. Ian gets stuff from Tony. I always make a little joke about that, Tony York. I've had a couple now, just recently. Those have been really fun, and they've put a smile on my face. So that was great, and it was truly it was an amazing gift. And he also did a Zombie Flesh Eaters 4K, a comparison, between the 4K and the Blu-ray. And there's been a number of these that have been coming up in my alerts. I watched the Mondo one. It was so comprehensive, I didn't really need to watch any of the others. So that was absolutely fantastic. Then we moved to Playtendoguy, and I haven't seen much from Playtendoguy for a while, but he started a series called the Top 100 Films of All Time in his opinion, and he's done from number 100 up to back to 91, and he's going backwards, so he'll have his number one at the top. I find that very exciting and daunting at the same time for my friend. Obviously you got to have seen the films, but the secondly is that if anybody asked me for the top 100, it changes so regularly that I'd find it very, very difficult. I've got some stalwart ones that I've considered to be at the very top, but because of the different genres as well, it just changes so much. So I'm really excited for this little project for him, and I hope everybody goes and sees the video. You'll always be shouting and going, "You are? Well, how can you have that at number blah 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 blah?" That's what makes those so fun. I find them amazing. Great fun. Thank you very much, Pete, for doing that. Then we've got Through the Lens. He did The New Fantastic Four is actually good. I'm so glad he went away and actually saw an entertaining flick without giving it too much criticism. He did give it some criticism, and I agreed to parts of those. I'm not so big on Marvel that I protect them to the point where I'm saying, "You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong." There is crap in that film, right? Absolute crap. But it's, as a package, does it work? As a image, does it work? As a score and music, does it work? As a story and a beats, does it work? And overall, that's why I gave it an 8. I won't tell you what his score is. He says it's actually quite good. I'll let you watch it. Really enjoyed that, and in fact I was able to watch it because I've watched the film myself, and I remember I don't watch too many of stuff until I've actually seen the film, so I can have an opinion myself, which means I have to go back regularly to his back catalogue. So that's absolutely marvellous. We move on to Did You See That? And just want to do a big congratulations to Did You See That? He's reached 10,000 subs. 10,000, think about it. That's great going. Absolutely marvellous. Well deserved. He did a live stream on it. I was actually there and able to comment and wish him well for that. Absolutely marvellous. I do watch his stuff. It's why it's in my blog. He also did a Fantastic Four review, again slightly different to Josh's. It's why it's really good. It's why I like seeing these different critiques on things. I've seen some bad ones, I've seen some good ones, I've seen ones that seem to show to me that they didn't get what they were watching. Those are the ones that I'm basically going at. You know what I mean? You've got to take things into context a little bit, and just remember, it's a film. It's not life. My God, you know. Congrats again, my friend. Wishing you well. Looking forward to all the major projects that you've got coming up in the future. We move on to Muckman-Movies, who just did a couple of shorts, really. He did 5 films with strange titles that are in his collection. And I was thinking about my own collection, and I was looking down my list because I use a program called Collectors that lists all my films and TV. And yeah, you could say some of them have got weird names like Buckaroo Banzai and all this sort of stuff. I mentioned to him in the chat on Wednesday, is Xanadu a strange title? It is, I suppose. You know, there's films with Sean Connery, Zardoz. You know, I've got that in my collection. Yeah, I suppose I could have listed 5, but I don't know. I'm not very good at these community and giving out what they are, but I really do love it when other people do them. They get into the community spirit, and it's something that I should do more of. I'm just a big community person that mentions their channel and talk about what they've brought out in a hope that that promotes them, because I love the stuff. If I don't love the stuff, or I haven't seen it, it doesn't get mentioned. There is stuff that I love that I haven't got round to watching for a long time, and it's because I've run out of time,
run out of time. My mum takes up all of my time now, really does. Some of this stuff that you'll see here each week probably won't be there the next week, and it's not because I've stopped. It's because I just haven't got to it that week. So please don't feel bad. And the last one is Movie Collector. He did a Sinners 4K review, which, as you know, I got my own steelbook of that last week. It's one of my favourite films of the year. I was very interested in knowing whether a ex-cinematographer person, an ex-projectionist, should I say, thought of that film, whether he thought that there was enough grain, not too much grain, picture quality, sound quality, etc., etc. So it was an interesting thing for me. And as you can see here, I haven't mentioned the soundtrack. I just did not get to it. Whenever I mention a soundtrack, you'll tend to find I've got it in an open playlist in my channel. You can go in there and you'll see TV films, score themes, all sorts of stuff, music from my past. And usually if there's a score to a film that I've been listening to this week, I will list the YouTube channel that gives you a demonstration of what that's like. So please go and have a little look at that. And the last thing is Game and Tech on YouTube. These are generally my friends that I've known for years, and they're all into their computers and the games and all that sort of stuff, so they fit into here. Down the rabbit hole, what did he do? Oh my god, I let a True Earth sponge rot for years. Yeah, he said he couldn't get these sponges anymore, and he showed a breakup of recordings like every 6 months of this sponge that you just wet and it expands, but it's biodegradable, and so it will basically crumble to dust and is friendly to the environment. It took about 2.5 years for this sponge to actually degrade to that point, and by that point he couldn't buy them anymore. I did a Google search, found out that you can still buy them. So I did post that link, although he has moved on to another product. But it was a great video. He also did Isolation. Yes, it's just called Isolation, this video. I had to think then for a moment. But he's got a sister who's doing stuff on video called, I think it's called The Footnotes. Yeah. As anybody who sort of like has been to school and has worked and has done English literature, you'll know that the footnotes is where you used to write your little notes about Shakespearean plays and all of that sort of stuff. So this one was about isolation, and it was a response to Wee Bob, who was talking about isolation in book form, TV form and film form, naming certain well-known things that you recognise as isolation in what you've watched in the past. So, of course, Castaway comes to mind, Robinson Crusoe comes to mind, all of those. But it's interesting to know what other aspects of isolation has appeared in, especially books for me, because I don't read too much. So that was brilliant. We'll move now to Canadian royalty, Robert's Retro Gaming. I am not worthy. Oh my god, his output is amazing. Mostly an Atari guy. Known him for years. Loves games. Just loves life, to be quite honest. Doesn't let anything get him down. It's the one thing. And he's always promoting his friends. One of these days, I'll be one of them. Just my little dig. But he did Minecraft Play, episodes 149 and 150. No Man's Sky, episode 50. Spectrum gameplay of a game called Firelord, which I've played. Atari 2600 gameplay of something called Space Chase. Never played that. Looked interesting. Atari 800 play, or 8-bit play, should I say, of Beachhead, Dizzy Dice, Factor Man, and Domain of the Dead, for which Beachhead was the one that I've seen many times and played, and I've even done my own retrospective of that game back in the day of my 8-bit years. So, and I think he watched that and he said he thought I did really well. I thought it went well, that video. The trouble was I got all the way to the end If I'd have blown that thing up, you'd have seen the end and you wouldn't want to play the game anymore, is what I thought. So I'm glad it ended where it did. So that's great. Thank you and salute, my friend. You do a fantastic job. If you weren't around again, I don't know what I'd do. There's something every day for me. That's what I love about that. I can get up at 6 in the morning, get my mum, give her tablets, and then just quickly spend 5 minutes actually having a look and see what Robert's brought out. Because he's in Canada, he's putting his stuff out at 2 or 3 in the morning. So I get to watch it in the morning when I wake up. It's absolutely brilliant. We get to Steve's Gaming Part 2, and unfortunately he's on hiatus at the moment. He's not very well, but he will be back, and that's why I will keep mentioning him, even though there was nothing to report on this week. Please go and sub to his channel. It's well worth your attention. Absolutely marvellous guy. One of my favourite friends. I hate it that when we don't talk, to be quite honest. I miss our chats, text messages. It's just with my mum. It's getting really impossible now to stay in touch with people. Regret on that a little bit. But anyway, we moved to 20th Century Gaming, who did two videos, Last Ninja and Last Ninja 2, both long plays. Last Ninja 2 I'm more acquainted to than The Last Ninja, although I have played both. Both fantastic videos, brought back some many memories. And salute, my friend, on that one. That's Mark from 20th Century Gaming. You got Colin Jones, aka Ponder, who I mentioned earlier on. He's getting very close to his blog, I would think. It might be this Monday. It's probably the following Monday. He did a Mainmeister High Score Kerfuffle game selection video where you choose the next game for the next round. So that's always interesting, because I now know what to look forward to when people start bringing in their high score tables. You've got Seb's Place. Now, I've mentioned Seb before. Seb was one of those people that used to just go around and see what was in charity shops and stuff, and then he upped his game big time, and now he's got thousands of subs. But he did a video this time called Why Do I Remember This Awful Game on the Spectrum? And it was pretty looking awful game. But I can understand why he played it, and I can understand why he thought it was addictive. So that was really good. Then we've got Wee Bob, who did a Solitude Solitude that's displayed in movies and books. That's what it's called. Sorry, my chicken scratch again. Again, it's like a community question thing. I might try and partake in that. It's very difficult with my mum at the moment. And finally, we've got Mainmeister, who did a Sunday live, a Wednesday Sid play, as I said, at the same sort of time as I was doing mine, but I managed to get caught up. And that's the thing that you have to have in the back of your mind. I actually got to watch it, so I didn't miss anything. It's just I like to watch my friend Mainmeister live all the time as it's happening and chat to people about it. And he did a Friday waffle on Friday. Absolutely marvellous. So that's everything. So all I've got to do now is show you what's arrived this week. So I'm going to change my camera. There we go. So you see in a top-down view. One of the things that's arrived this week is this one. It's the 50th anniversary of Jaws. There's very little difference in it compared to all the other Jaws that are in it. You'll buy this one because of the artwork, or you've missed out on the other big boxes. But Jaws is quintessential. Something that I tend to buy over and over again. It is one of my favourite films, after all. Then there was this one that came from is it Arrow? That's right, it's from Arrow. It's an 80s flick, very early, called The Stuff, which is about, I think, alien goo that basically takes over this town and wants to take over the world. And it seems to be this yogurt type thing, drink that is causing all the problems. So that's definitely a nice little film to watch Really, really good. I'm looking forward to that. And then we got another one of these Warner packages. They package these so well. Look at this. I open this up. There you go. And you've got another steelbook this time. It is Final Destination Bloodlines, because it is more about the people that that moved on in the first flick, had children, they're now grown up, and they're the target of death. Because if your mother dies, you wouldn't be born, would you? So that's what the rectification is there. So I'm going to go to new camera just for a second. There. That's it. And I'm going to just do a quick pause, and then I'll be back and playing videos of trailers of stuff I've watched this week. So bear with me, won't be a second. Okay, so I think I'm ready for the trailers. I haven't done this for a while. I've got to remember about the mic and everything. I think I've got everything all sorted. So I'm going to drop to media playback. I'm going to shut this mic up, and I'm going to let you watch some movie trailers of stuff that I've actually watched this week and stuff that's arrived this week. So shutting up now. Hope you enjoy these trailers.
Drinks all around. Family, you don't get to pick the one you get. Just gotta love the one you got.
I always knew this day would come.
I got it.
I don't think you got it.
I held him off for years.
Charlie, get up here.
He's a relentless son of a bitch. Won't stop till he finishes the job. Death is coming for our family.
I said, oh, 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 oh.
Grandma, what's happening to us?
Years ago, I had a premonition that started it all. I saw what death was about to do. I saved a lot of lives that night.
Everyone needs to get off the dance floor!
Lives that were never meant to be saved. But death doesn't like it when you mess with his plans. This book, it will show you everything you need to know to keep our family safe.
It all started with Grandma. Death is coming for us because we were never supposed to exist.
Watch out!
Only by embracing death will it pass you by.
Maybe death's not actually coming for our family. Because that would be crazy.
Good luck.
The stuff is here now. Great new day sensation. Light and free now. Gives you elevation. Enough is never enough. Enough is never enough of the stuff.
The stuff, the taste that makes you hungry for more. The stuff, taste that delivers.
We interrupt this presentation with the following urgent message.
Tonight, America is in grave danger. We are under alien attack by a popular dessert known as the stuff.
Here, Jason, take some.
No, don't eat that. There is something alive in there.
Tasty.
There's something alive in yogurt. It's called benign bacteria.
If the stuff is in your house, do not eat it. If you have it on your shelves, do not sell it. If you distribute this material, close your doors, make no more sales.
Enough. It's never enough.
You know, all my life I wanted to do something big.
That's what we're here for. Now, what exactly do you intend to do here in the United States?
Set a land speed record. I'm from New Zealand.
Where? Welcome to Hollywood.
What is this?
It's a cork from a brandy bottle.
He's got no parachute, he's got no brakes.
Aren't you scared you'll kill yourself if you crash?
No.
How fast you were going back there?
Yeah, about 150, 160 miles an hour. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Ever since I was a lad, I've been interested in things that go fast.
Yeah, had to find the microphone bit then. 3 little trailers for you there. Final Destination Bloodlines, which looks incredibly fun. The Stuff, which I remember back from the 80s. And The World's Fastest Indian, which we discussed at length in Ian Hill, The Ramblings live recording. Not Wednesday just gone, but the Wednesday before, which is absolutely an Anthony Hopkins extravaganza, to be quite honest. And with that, I'm going to say salute and thank you very much. It's been an interesting blog. Got a few things off my chest. I feel a lot better. I'm trying my best to get YouTube stuff out. I'm dismayed about how good and how bad they are, but I'm hoping that the enthusiasm shines through. And with that, thank you so much, and salute, and see you next week. Hope you have fun. Bye-bye.